Welcome to Multifamily Deal Lab, where your host, Dave Lindahl, dissects recent multifamily deals done by his guests. Dave will extract what went right, what went wrong, and a number of key takeaways so your next deal may be more profitable.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Multifamily Deal Lab. I'm Dave Lindahl. I'm your host, and our guests are, guys, tell everybody who you are and where you're from.
Mike Ballard and Kevin Romney. We're from Las Vegas, Nevada.
Excellent. And how'd you guys end up teaming up to do deals?
Kevin, I'll let you take that.
Yeah. Well, that's a fun story. So Mike and I knew each other in college is where we originally met. We reconnected here in Las Vegas when my son asked his daughter to prom. And so Mike was kind of a consultant in another business that I had, and I was getting ready to sell that business. And I said, Mike, what am I going to do next? And that's when we kind of formulated the idea of Camino Verde Group and being involved in multifamily properties.
Wow, that's great. It's interesting. There's another group called the Outlaw Group, and they met because their kids went to the prom, and they ended up getting the in-laws.
It's a new strategy.
There you go.
A trend.
Yeah, excellent. So tell everybody about the deal that we're going to talk about today.
Sure. Mike, you want to do that? Or you want me to?
Go ahead.
So the deal we're talking about today is Camino 2630. It's located at 2630 Sherwood Street in Las Vegas, a stone's throw from the Strip. And the property is 20 units. When we purchased it, there were several units that were down and in severe disrepair. We purchased it with a bridge loan from one of our preferred bridge.
We're gonna get there, but
okay,
what was the purchase price?
So the purchase price, we purchased it for $1.425 million. So $1,425,000 was our purchase price.
All right, and how much did you raise for that?
We raised about $525,000 was the equity that we actually raised for that.
So here's the interesting thing about this deal. When I was looking at this package last week, it looks like you guys own like 5 properties in the same neighborhood.
We do, absolutely.
All right, so how did that come about, and what number is this of those 5?
So this was, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. This was number 4 of the 5.
Okay.
So it's there in the yellow that you can see there on the screen.
And how did you end up here? How did you end? Well, like, what was the first one, and how did you get it?
So that's the first one we purchased was at 2575 Sherwood Street. We had just finished up the RE Mentor workshop, and Mike and I made a goal. We're going to buy our first property within 90 days.
Oh, that's awesome. Let me just stop you there. I love those commitments. When I used to teach that event, I taught it for 12 years. When I used to teach that event until I had kids, I used to love it when somebody would come up to me and say, Dave, by the time we see you again at one of the other events, we're going to own X amount. It's that commitment that almost inevitably, the person would come up to me and show me the picture of the property that they bought.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So we made that commitment, and we closed. We found this property on market through a particular broker, and we're able to close it on July 31st of 2019. And then that broker is the one that brought us these additional properties in this neighborhood. Once he knew that we could close and could get the deal done, then he brought us other properties within the neighborhood. And that's what he did on this particular Camino 2630 property. He brought this one to us off market, owned by a Japanese group, and they were getting ready to sell.
So let's go back to the first one. It was the same broker. It's the same broker for all the deals.
Same broker for all the deals. Yes, absolutely.
And so how did you meet up with this broker? And how did you get to a point where he was giving you a deal at cash flow that actually worked?
Mike, you want to cover that?
Yeah. So one of the businesses that got me intrigued into this is I've started a lot of businesses over my career, and one of which is an outsourced accounting firm for apartment owners. We made the Inc. 500. We've done over 55,000 units where we do the monthly accounting, and several of your students are now our clients, and we'll talk more about that later. But
you can certainly give out your contact information. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah. And
Once
so I'm pretty sure.
now. That's interesting.
Okay. So the website is multifamilyaccounting.com, and the company is Ascent Multifamily Accounting.
Mhm.
And we have large clients, but we have a number of small clients. And we were doing the work for a brokerage firm that was also doing property management, which is the firm that this group was with. And I went and I got to know many of the brokers because of this business all over the country, and property managers all over the country because of this business. And so when we were doing our commitments, right, we wanted to meet this many brokers every week and that type of thing, I called up the broker that was our client and said, hey, could we meet? And they put us together, and it was a senior broker, put us with a couple newer brokers. And one of them we just connected with. He brought us a deal and we closed it. And then he liked the fact that he got a commission. So then, right, if we help them make money, then they keep bringing us deals. And so that's what happened.
You close them, they'll bring them.
Exactly.
They care about.
That's right.
Yes.
I'm interested in this deal, but I'm also interested in the fact that you get 5 deals right in the same neighborhood. When I was investing in Brockton, small city behind me, where I live, blue collar city, I was buying 3 to 6 unit properties, and I would buy multiple properties in the same neighborhood, but not like clustered like that. I mean, I think the most I had on one street was 3. And that was because I bought a house that was, there were drug dealers in there. And I had contacted the state police and asked them, what would be, if I buy this house, would you help me get the drug dealers out? And they're like, oh, absolutely. We'll raid the place if you want. And that's a whole nother story, but that's what they did. And that was successful. And, we got all the bad people out and put some good people in, and we made a bunch of money in that house, cash flowed great, and realized there was another drug house on the street. So we went to the owner, and who was having a really hard time, and we bought that one. Sergeant Thomas did the same thing, like clockwork, got him out, and we redid that one. And we got a third one on the same street. That was Farrington Street in Brockton, and we got a commendation from the city for cleaning the street up.
Oh, that's great.
Exactly. Yeah, we've now purchased even one more after that, this one as well. So, yeah, one of the things we talk about is we walk the neighborhood and we see a bunch of 30 and 40-year-old cars, 20, 30, 40-year-old cars, and then there's one Mercedes. Yeah, and that's the guy we want to evict, right? Because he's the guy that's selling drugs.
Oh, yeah, right. I hadn't even thought of that. I've never heard that concept before in the 20 years I've been in real estate.
So, So,
hey, wait. So the biggest risk of evicting a drug dealer out is getting another drug dealer in, right? Because the store has been established. Everybody knows where it is. Everybody knows he's out, and everybody else wants that location, right? Do you fall into that problem?
Mm-hmm. No, I think one of the things we do, especially when we took over one, sometimes we'll bring in roving security, and we basically encourage a police presence on the site, much like you did. And, we probably have a third to half of the tenants are good tenants.
Oh, yeah.
They want the bad guys out. And so we just try to, and Kevin probably should be speaking more to this than I am. He does more of the asset management. But our goal is, to turn some of those tenants that are the bad influence out.
Yeah, absolutely. When we take over a property, the first thing we do is we want to get the bad tenants out and replace them with excellent tenants. And so we do everything we can to do that. We work very well with the existing tenants that are there. Our goal is to provide a safe, clean environment for working class families to live and for their families to live in. So one of the first things that we do is we provide security to the property. We install cameras. We install locking gates. We lock it down to make sure that nobody is getting into the units that shouldn't be, and that families feel safe, and that it's a good place for them to raise their kids, and a good place to live and work from.
And this neighborhood, Dave, was built in the 1960s, in the early 60s, right? So the properties are 60 years old. So it's not like the new suburban, it's not class A or class B. This is workforce housing. What?
Is that C- neighborhood?
Yeah, generally, but it's close to the strip, right? So people could walk to several of the there's thousands of jobs in the area. Um, and so,
So I just want to caveat one thing. I have an expression that we used to use when we were going into these neighborhoods, but way back in the day, that you take over property, you get rid of the slow payers, the no payers, and the drug dealers, right? But the other thing is people that are listening that haven't started yet, you do not have to start here. I started here because doing those types of properties because that was just my mindset. I didn't really care. I just wanted to make money. But then I realized it was a lot easier money to make. You can make just as much or more without all the hassles of doing these things. In this particular case, you guys found a niche and turned around a neighborhood, which is awesome. So when you bought the second property, when you realized you had a second property inside that neighborhood, did you have a vision after you bought that first property that, hey, if we could get more in this area, we could make a bunch of money? Or did the second one become available and then all of a sudden you started to see that vision?
Well, I can tell you about how we acquired the second one, and then Mike can share with you the vision for the neighborhood. One of our neighbors, one street over, owned about 210 units. And our broker was able to convince him to peel off 28 units and sell those to us. And so that's how we made the second purchase. It's right behind the first property that we owned. And came in, it was very rundown and dilapidated. We came in with bridge debt that allowed us some construction money and just upgraded the tenant or upgraded the units, and then we're able to upgrade the tenants. And certainly we've had a plan for the neighborhood, and I'll let Mike share that with you.
So I'm interested to know why he carved off the 28 units, because that's very unusual. So sort of a benefit to do that?
Well, it is. And I think he was having some struggles and some challenges with his tenant base, and was willing to flip those. We have since gone back and tried to buy the other 182 units that he has. We've been in discussions with him at least twice with trying to purchase those units, but have not been able to get him to let go of those yet.
Because you cleaned up the neighborhood, you increased the tenant profile, and now he's making money, more money than he ever did before, and he's happy, right?
probably.
That's right.
Yeah.
We increased the value of his properties.
But part of it is he also had unrealistic expectations. He had some properties that were more than 50% uninhabitable. There were buildings that had multiple doors boarded up and windows boarded up and plumbing issues and major water damage where people couldn't live in them, right? And so one of the issues we had was, he wanted the same price for those as these. And we're like, no, we were starting to experience where he was averaging, let's say, $650 average rents. We were getting over 850 after we made our improvements. And, we tried quickly, but he was just so unrealistic in a couple different areas that we just said, it doesn't make sense. And then all of a sudden another 28 units showed up, or another 24 units, or
somebody else.
Because the neighborhood probably has, 2,000 units in the neighborhood. And there are 3 or 4 major owners in the neighborhood.
And he's been fixing his up. In the meantime,
he has been. Yes, he's been fixing his up since we purchased the other property.
Yeah.
All right, good. So how did the other ones come available? Just owners ready to sell?
Pretty much.
A letter campaign or anything?
The one that we talked about, Caminos 2630, that was a group out of Japan, and they were ready to sell. We purchased another one right across the street from that was another ownership group from Asia. We just recently in April purchased another 10 units in the neighborhood. And this was, there's a casino on the corner that's kind of catty corner to the 10 units that we purchased. And this property was owned by the casino owner, and he was using it basically to subsidize housing for his employees. Oh. And he had gotten to the point where he was ready to sell the casino. And if he sold the casino, he was going to sell the property. So again, off market, through negotiating with our broker and his connections, we were able to get our foot in the door and be able to purchase that property without it going on the market. And it's right next to the very first one that we purchased.
Nice. So have you been in contact with the other owners in that particular community? And are you guys working together, to create a better community? Tell us about that.
We have. I've been in touch with some of the other owners. Our broker's been in touch with some of the owners. We've attempted to purchase additional units. But as one property is gentrified and lifted up and re-tenanted, the other owners come along. And so we have had, some of the other owners who are doing the same thing now that we're doing, which is upgrading their units and making it better, a more presentable, appropriate place to be able to live for working class.
And Dave, we've done this enough now where we're to the point where what you said probably 10 minutes ago, we're going to sell the portfolio now and move on to B and B minus, B plus properties to buy.
Because
we thought
it's an easier life.
Yeah, it's an easier life and bigger properties and that type of thing, and we're ready to do that. We've gotten up to 640 units in 4 years, and we have also started doing development. That's something I had been involved with before. Yeah. And so we're moving kind of a little more upstream.
All of the properties in this neighborhood that we've purchased have been 36 units or less. And we've come to learn that, it's about the same amount of work to close on 200 unit property as it is on a 20 unit property. So we've decided to take the next step up, and we're not underwriting anything under about 80 units. And now we're setting our sights on the, 80 to 150 unit range, where we stay below the big boys, but still, in an area, in a market that we can afford. We know we can close. We know we can get the deal done.
It's an evolution. Everybody goes through this evolution in their own time frame. It's like grief. Everybody handles grief in their own way, and it takes, in their own time. The evolution up to B type of properties and the easier life. See, most of us that are doing the, I don't know your backgrounds, but most of us that start with the C minus type of properties, even the D pluses, we come from a childhood of scarcity. We didn't have a lot back then, and
exactly.
And so when we start buying properties, we look for the most number of units we can get for the least amount of money. Number one. Number two, we didn't live in these B neighborhoods and B areas, and so we're not used to it. So myself, I did a lot in Brockton. We bought a bunch of different units. Most of them were CC minus. I still even joke today, like if somebody comes there and applies for a job, or I'm talking with somebody, they say they're from Brockton. I say, oh yeah, what street you're from? And if they say a street and I don't recognize the name, well, I know they come from a good neighborhood, because I owned in all the bad neighborhoods of Brockton. Yeah. So, and then it took a mindset shift when I had another partner start bringing B deals to me. He grew up opposite. He grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth. So when I started taking him for the tours of the property I own, he's like, he goes, why are we stopping here? I said, oh, because I own this building. He's like, you own this building? And I said, yeah. And I was like really proud. And he said, are we going to get out? I was like, yeah, we're going to get out. We're going to walk the property. So he started bringing me B deals, and I was like, oh no, too expensive. And then he finally said to me, he said, Dave, you said that if it cash flows properly, it's a deal. You said that if it meets the Trinity, it's a deal. These do that. And, now you're telling me that you're not going to do the deal because they're too expensive. It doesn't make sense. And that was the mindset shift for me. And then from there, I started going to the higher end assets. Just another quick story. I was with Carl Withers and Ed Babanco, guys that came into the system back in 2008, 2009, probably about 2012. They asked me to come down and partner with them in a property in Atlanta. So it was 50% occupied. It was in a difficult area, difficult tenant base, a lot of different repairs that needed to be made. And we walked the property, and at the end of it, they said, so what do you think, Dave? Do you want to partner on this one? And I said, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I have seen the ghosts of every mistake that I have ever made in apartment investing in this property, in this one property. I said, how many properties do you guys own? And they said 12. And I said, yeah, that's what I thought. I said, and are they all like this? And they said, yeah. I said, why are you still in the C's? You've got to have experience to live a better life in the B's. The C pluses, reposition them into B's, or just buy the B properties. So again, it's an evolution that everybody makes, but it tends to the people that grow up in scarcity, start with the CC minuses. The people with the silver spoons, they go right to the B's and yeah. So let's quickly talk about this deal that we were going to talk about, and that is you bought this 20 unit property for how much was it? 1.4.
$1,425,000.
Okay, and how much were they asking?
I don't recall. I think they were in about the 1.6 range.
Okay. Was there any special negotiating technique that took it down to the 1.425? Do you remember?
No, there wasn't any, particular negotiating tactic. Although, in addition to the 1.425, we were also able to negotiate a repair credit of about $30,000. After we had done our inspections, we came back and we said, okay, we have this, and this is going to be more expensive than we had originally thought, and so we were able to negotiate an additional repair credit, which took us down to a little bit under $70,000 per door that we purchased the units for.
And
the cash price.
Was it just additional work that needed to be done, or were there any surprises during the inspection?
Well, there were several units that were offline and were just in terrible shape. And once we got in and saw how bad they were, we just said, boy, this is worse than we anticipated, worse than we expected, and we need a bigger discount.
They had 5 units. They had 5 units that were uninhabitable, right? Where the toilets were off, there was holes in the walls and the ceilings. The copper was stripped out of the walls. So it was tough. So 5 out of the 20 were completely uninhabitable. The windows were totally broken out and there was plywood over them, and they just weren't releasing them. That was their strategy.
But when you bought that property, those other tenants must have been so happy, after you get rid of the ones and kept the ones that you did. I mean, because people living in a property with 5 units, a 20-unit building where 1/4 of the units are uninhabitable, and people in there stealing the copper. I remember I used to buy buildings in these difficult areas, 3 to 6 family units, and I used to board up the first floor and put a sign on the plywood that said copper has already been stolen. That's how I used to see my copper.
Got it. Wow, that's interesting.
All right, so this raise was how much was the raise?
$525,000.
And where'd you get it? Where'd you get it?
This one because we had purchased 4 other properties in the neighborhood. We already had an investor base that knew the area, that knew our talent, and that we could turn the property around. We basically sent an email out to our investor base, and Mike, I think it was about 48 hours before we had this thing fully subscribed.
Yeah. It was just the great thing that I've learned from this process, Dave, is that if you treat the investors right, and if you view them as a key stakeholder, they're going to take care of you. So we communicate, we send nice letters, we tell them the bad news as well as the good news, right? And so and so we were clear with these folks. And so we had just a few investors. We even had to tell some of the folks, we were oversubscribed, and we had to go to some of the folks and say, you've got to put in less because we need to give everybody that was in the last deal the same opportunity to do this deal. Okay. So we had some guys that wanted to put in $100,000 that we said, all you can do is 75. And so they were people that I knew from Rotary, from we knew them from church or from Little League Baseball, those types of things.
So you started your investor base with your network.
Yeah.
You started educating people that you are now going to start investing in multifamily properties, and you may have some properties available. Yeah.
And that was an interesting process when we did our very first one.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin and I took our Rolodexes, and we're both, we know lots of people. We're very gregarious. We had, I had 3,000 people in my contacts, and he had over 2,000. So we put them together. Then we took out all the people we knew couldn't invest.
I got a quick question for you. Were you at a boot camp where they told you at the end of the first day to go into your Rolodex and tell people what you're doing and ask them how much they want to commit?
Oh, absolutely. That was a big part of it. That had to be a third of what you guys talked about, right? Talking the grocery line, talking to this. And I'll tell you a story there. So Kevin and I took our list. We threw out all of our relatives that we knew couldn't afford squat. And we took out all the other people we knew couldn't afford. We ended up with 1,100 names, put them in an email software, MailChimp to start with. And we mailed it out and said, hey, we're doing this deal. You're going to get a 20% internal rate of return. And for every dollar you put in, you should get more than $2 back, and invest in this neighborhood in Las Vegas. And we got like a 20% response rate. And the response was take us off your list. What are you doing emailing us? You know?
All right. I thought he had some magic somewhere.
And so then Kevin and I prioritized and we started dialing, right?
Yeah.
We tried to dial 10 or 20 people every day. And after like 2 weeks, we'd only raised a fourth of what we were trying to raise for that deal. And so, but we got one phone call from somebody we met at one of these workshops. So we go to multifamily workshops. We go to yours. We're going to Unlimited Partnering in a couple of months in San Diego, but we go to other workshops too. And there was a guy who responded. He was also fairly new. And he says, how's your raise going? I got your deal. And I said, well, it's going okay. And he said, no, tell me the truth. How much have you raised? What do you know? And we told him, and he said, I think I can raise the rest if you'll give me part of your sweat equity and let me be involved in the asset management and let us be a little more involved. And we said, I talked to Kevin. Kevin said, sure. And the guy in 4 days came back and said, I got it. And it was his father, his father's best friend, his grandfather, and a couple other guys.
Is he still today? Did you do more deals with him?
Yeah. Some of those guys, though, he actually is doing a lot bigger deals. He's already moved on to the B deals on his own. Yeah. And he's got over 2,000 units now. So he's, but he's a good friend. And several of those guys have continued to invest in our deals. But he's now spending his own money on his own deals.
All right, I'm going to ask you to give your contact information, and because we're getting near the end of the podcast, your contact information, number one, excuse me, and then what's the best business book you've read? So, Mike, go first.
Okay, my contact information is mike@caminovertigroup.com. Phone number is 702-467-0789. Our website again is caminovertigroup.com. And the best business book, one that has influenced me an awful lot, is Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Oh yeah, come on. All right, you, Kevin.
So the name of our company is Camino Verde Group. Our website is caminovertigroup.com. You can contact me at kevin@caminovertigroup.com. And one of the best books I read recently was Never Eat Alone. Another one that had a big impact on me is How to Swim with the Sharks.
Oh, and, I love that book by Harvey Mackay. You know, I met him.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, I was during the Bush administration. They brought a bunch of commercial real estate investing guys up, and that's when we were in our big run. And I was actually one of the top 10 borrowers from Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae. So I was on that list, and they brought us in assistant deputy of the secretary. They knew back in 2008 that the commercial train was going to go off the rails. They knew they couldn't stop it. They just wanted to have pamper the fall as much as possible. So they had a bunch of commercial guys in there. And as I'm walking into the room, there's probably like 14 of us from around the country. And I look over across the table and I said, "Are you Harvey Mackay?" And he said, "Yes." And I was like, "Wow." So we had conversations during the break, and then, of course, he followed up the Mackay 67. He followed up with some pertinent information that he had learned from me. And yeah, that was great. That was one of the highlights.
Hey, Dave, we didn't get to talk about how we sold that deal. So let me just give quick statistics.
Okay,
when we sold that 20-unit project, 24 months after we bought it, we sold it for, how much was it, Kevin? I want to say it was
$2.3 million.
$2.3 million. Our investors got a 24% internal rate of return. For every dollar they invested, they got $1.57 out.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're delighted to get their money back. They got tax breaks along the way, and it was a great return. And we were paying them an 8% pref every month as part of the transaction.
That's awesome. So this has been another edition of Multifamily Deal Lab. All I ask you to do is share this with a friend if you think a friend could benefit from this podcast, and come see us next week. All right. So thanks, guys. That was great.
Great. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
This has been another edition of Multifamily Deal Lab. If watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, so you don't miss the next session, and review the contact links on this page.